Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the 3:30 session. I am not Kathleen Brady, but I will be taking over the responsibilities for presenting our plenary speaker, Dr. Vitor Tardelli, who will be speaking on the burden of cocaine in South America. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for this introduction. And the goal here is to give a little bit of the panorama about what happens in South America in terms of not only the impact of the production of cocaine, but also how it affects the local communities, the local environment, and the continent as a whole. So my main objective here is to give a South American version which goes beyond narcos. First, this is, I have no disclosures to report. Beyond the narcos objective, the ones for this session are to understand a little bit of the context in South America, to identify the dimensions of the impact, so to put some figures and numbers to help understand the extension of the issues we have and how to properly deal with those. To consider some policies that were tried in the past, in the present, hopefully different ones in the future, and explore what to do next, which with such a big problem that is very ingrained to our South American reality. So just a little bit of the context of the continent itself. So the Andes region is very has very good conditions for the production of coca. As you might know, and I'm going to discuss this later, cocaine comes from the coca leaf, but these are two very different things in terms of context of use and cultural background and things like that. As you might know, South America was colonized by many European countries, mostly Spanish and Portuguese, and to a lesser extent, other countries like France. And the whole dynamics of colonization has created this extractive dynamic and economies that were based on the extraction of natural resources. And this has a lot to do with cocaine, as we're going to talk about now. The power dynamics persist in the modern era, meaning that we are no longer in a colonized dynamic, but we have relationships with many stakeholders that still create a dynamic of power, submission, and vulnerability. In terms of economy, like I said, we depend a lot on the extraction and the exporting of commodities to countries with higher income. We have a very, very, very relevant problem with income inequality. So if you look at the Gini indexes of South America compared to other regions and the world, you would be very impressed. Rural areas in South America are very underdeveloped, so you don't have many opportunities for economical growth, which also creates the climate for us to have what we have in terms of the coca farming. And this whole vulnerability creates, obviously, a situation where those illicit economies can thrive because they have not much opposition. So, as I was saying, the coca use, when we talk about the coca leaf, has a very different meaning in terms of context, in terms of cultural background compared to cocaine. It is a very traditional thing in the Andean people, in the Andean cultures and countries. It has religious use, it has a use in social gatherings, so people, like in this picture, they would get together to use the coca leaf. and it was used as a mild daily energizer. The stimulant, the energizing effect of the coca leaf when chewed is not even close to what we have about snorted cocaine, which is a much more refined and extracted compound when we compare it to the coca leaf itself. So this is to say very clearly, those are very different things, even though cocaine comes from the coca leaf. It is a symbol of the indigenous and of those people identity and resistance to what happened during colonization. And Bolivia, for example, which is one of the most cocalera nations in South America, protects the coca leaf in its constitution. And they recently even have a cocalero president, who is Evo Morales. Just to give you then a historical evolution of the coca use, we have the traditional use, which is in the pre-Columbian era. And like I was saying, this was a very culturally ingrained plant used in religious ceremonies and gatherings and things like that, and it was positively associated with disposition and energy. When the colonizers came, and in the Andean countries it was mostly Spain, what ended up happening is that they tried initially to ban the coca use from the people who were working in the exploitation. They were not able to forbid it, and they realized that stimulating effect could be actually interesting for production because they would have more energized workers. So they kind of went with the flow and let them just use their coca and use that to their own benefit. It was not before the 19th century where cocaine, as we know today, the active principle we come to ISAM to talk about, was isolated by the end of the 19th century. And at the beginning, it wasn't seen as such a bad thing. Everybody who has been to these talks has seen those slides with cocaine drops being sold in pharmacies and things like that. And this was the context. So there were medical application, commercial products, and cocaine isolated was seen. Even today, it's used for anesthesia and things like that, of course, in a much lesser extent. But this isolation of cocaine and the availability of cocaine as a compound by itself led to people using it recreationally with all the potential for harms and dependence we know about. So by the end of the 19th century, there was an increase in use, and there was a staggering number of people in the United States, which is where the data comes from, who were dependent on cocaine at this time. After that, there were efforts to regulate and prohibit, mostly prohibit rather than regulate, which led to a parallel trafficking, production, and routes. And this turns out to happen in South America because that's where coca was always produced and where there was a political and economical environment that would allow that to happen. So that's not before the 20th century. This illicit trafficking network and routes happen in the continent of South America. So just so we understand the main products we're talking about. So we have the coca leaf, which is the one that has this traditional cultural use, which is a natural plant used in the cultures of the Andean countries. As an intermediate between the coca leaf and the actual cocaine, which is cocaine hydrochloride, we have the pasta base, which is known as cocaine paste. The name changes by the region. So I think in Argentina they say Paco. There are other names more to the north of the continent that I don't remember now. Sorry? Basuco, thanks. Oh my God, this was very enthusiastic, thanks. And yeah, we have Paco, Basuco, which is a paste. It comes before the stage of refined cocaine, and the issues about it is that they are mixed with many adulterants. So not only people who use that have the harms and impacts of the cocaine principle, the cocaine product itself, but also they suffer the harm from the adulterants. So they would have skin issues, they would have nasal lesions and things like that. And then we get to cocaine hydrochloride, which is the snorted cocaine. Of course, not just snorted, it can be smoked, it can be injected, but that's the cocaine people come to ISAM to discuss, which is a white powder with 60 to 80% purity, and this is something that will have a relationship with the socioeconomic extract and with the context and the price market of that product. And then after the cocaine, so produced from refined cocaine, we have crack cocaine, which is smoked. It's basically mixed cocaine with sodium bicarbonate. I hope I made myself clear in that one. And this is also just like the base, the paste, associated with vulnerability. So this is just so you know, 100% of the cocaine of the world is produced in South America, in those 3 countries. There are negligible fractions that are produced, for example, in Ecuador, which is very close geographically to these places. But we have 2/3 being produced in Colombia. We have almost 1/4 in Peru, and the rest of it in Bolivia. This cultivation has been expanding dramatically since 2015. And Colombia suffers from the harms of it in the sense that it affects regions that should be protected, like indigenous lands or national parks, which are being taken over by the production of coca, for many reasons we can discuss right next. So as I was saying, there is a steady rise in the production of cocaine since 2015. This graph portrays 2018 on. But this is a 61% from the first bar to the left to the last bar to the right. So 61% in the supply of cocaine in 5 years is something very relevant. And this is not for anything. This is because there is increasing and growing demand from the consuming countries for cocaine. So we are at an all-time high cocaine production right now, and this is because the market wants it. The market is hungry. So just so we know a little bit about the area, there are 355,000 hectares, and if you are like me and have no idea what a hectare means, maybe you would understand in football fields. Makes a lot of sense to me, which is 497,000 football fields of coca cultivation. This is the last piece of data from 2023. And even more impressive, there is over 1 million people who are rural residents involved in the coca growing business. So this is a very large business that is increasing, skyrocketing, that involves many, many people who are obviously harmed by that. So as I was saying, this production has to expand to somewhere. And not often the individuals who are in control of cocaine production take into account the environment. So this will invade at some points national parks, indigenous territories, and things we want to preserve. So about the trafficking routes. So what happens after this cocaine is produced? We have hubs. We have places that consume cocaine more than others. North America is the main one. So North America is the main consumer and buyer of cocaine, and I would highlight North America in this case as US and Canada, even though Mexico has its own internal market. The US is where the cocaine wants to get. The routes there are through Central America, but this is very complicated. There's not a single route that comes from the producing countries to US, Canada. There are many, and I'm going to show you on the next slide. But most of the cocaine that comes from land, well, all of it, crosses the border through Mexico. Europe is also a region that consumes a lot of cocaine, and there is a big disparity between areas of Europe. So Western Europe, a little bit Central Europe as well, but definitely Western Europe consumes more cocaine than Eastern Europe, who tends to go more with amphetamines in terms of stimulants. And there are routes for that as well. So Ecuador is emerging, so specifically the port of Guayaquil, which is a city at the coast of Ecuador, is expanding as a port, as an exit place for the cocaine production to get to Europe. Even though it doesn't make much sense geographically, this is the arrangement that was possible in terms of law enforcement and security control and borders. We have intermediate hubs, which I would name West Africa and the Balkans. So those are places that would allow the trafficking routes to stop by and use those as entry ports for this market specifically, which is Western Europe. So when we talk about West Africa, we're talking about countries like Senegal, for example, which is one of the countries that is known for that. And in Europe, the biggest entry port is the port of Antwerp. And this is a very stereotypical image in my head, because these shipments that bring cocaine, they usually bring it disguised under loads of bananas. So like as a South American, I feel it's very stereotypical to put bananas and cocaines as something from South America that goes to other places. And Brazil, in turn, and I would say not just Brazil, I would point at least Argentina as in a similar situation. It's not only part of the trafficking routes in the way that it helps cocaine to leave the continent, but they also have very strong internal markets. So they buy a lot, they spend a lot, and they're also part of the route. So they have double the impact they would, because they have the harms from being in the tour, and they have the harms from consuming and buying, and the healthcare harms as well. So here we can see that we have like many possible routes. Of course, the regions I pointed as the most prolific ones, which are North America and Western Europe, are the ones who are getting more arrows in this map. But as you can see, they can come to those in very different routes. So if you look at the Andean countries here, until North America, they can bypass Mexico or they can come by land. And there are many ways it can get to Europe, for example. So including Western and Central Africa, the Balkans, especially Albania, and this is how it gets to Western and Central Europe. You can also notice that there are routes that will get it to Southern Africa, Oceania, and Asia, even though they're less used, they're less relevant. And this really impacts on what you have in terms of marketing. So you will see that these are the prices of 1 kilogram of cocaine in a wholesale by country. So there's a huge disparity there. When you look at the producing countries and compare to the countries that are further from the production hubs, we have undescribable. I didn't do the math of how many times Australia is more expensive than Peru, for example. But it shows very interestingly that when you buy cocaine, you don't just buy the drug, you pay for the risk, the trafficking routes, and the people who do the trafficking take on bringing the cocaine to that country, and that is expensive. Australia is a very interesting case because you can see that the prices are really high, and still they buy a lot of cocaine. They use a lot of cocaine. So it's very, you can see it is expensive. So in Australia, people who would buy cocaine would be mostly young professionals who have money to afford that, and this happens with a very high prevalence. So I want to talk a little bit about the impact in cultivation in the regions where, like I said, Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. So there are many problems that stem from the growth of coca. And one of them would be the occupational health hazards, which is basically what you expect from the direct work with cocaine growing. So you have the direct chemical exposure workers. They are not exactly regulated, so they are exposed, their hands and their breathing, to many chemical products. Further than that, those people live in that same area, and they have to live with the environment contamination as well. So the waste goes to the water, goes to the soil, and the same people who are exposed with their bare hands, they're exposed to the water they drink, and the soil where their children live, and things like that. Children are, of course, very impacted by that. There's a lot of children, 30,000 children working in cultivation. And obviously they are exposed to the same chemicals and exposure as the adults, but they're children, they should be at school. So abandonment of school by children in these areas is pretty common, both for economic needs, also because the organized crime will recruit these kids to work on the fields or to do any kind of military-based work. And of course, working closely with organized crime and armies and police, and having all this tension and conflict will get people intimidated constantly. One other thing is displacement. So, as I was saying, there are there's a lot of tension in this area, and conflicts, and sometimes the police will come, sometimes even military forces from foreign countries will come. The paramilitary narco-traffic organization will also be there. So many people are forced by many of those situations to move away. When we talk about displacement, it's just forced moving. So people who had to move from where they live because of those circumstances. So that's a big problem, like 8 million people in the last 40 years. The militarized responses are a very common cause of that. So if you have planes fumigating the planting area, you will obviously, as a grower, as a farmer, have problems and try to go somewhere else. So this is also one impact it has on the local population, and they will also recruit children, as said. In terms of the environment, as I was saying before, there is a lot of deforestation because of farming, because of the expansion, and they are starting to reach areas that the world cannot afford to lose, such as the Amazon basin and national parks in those countries, especially Colombia. There is an important component of chemical contamination. So producing cocaine has its price in the sense of creating a lot of waste for the environment. And I was pretty staggered when I saw this figure. Like 1 kilo of cocaine, which is something like this, would yield 600 liters of toxic waste. 600 liters, same case as hectares. I could not graphically see that in front of me, is the equivalent to 3 to 4 baths, full baths of water. So for 1 kilogram of cocaine. So in the scale they produce, you can only imagine how much toxic waste is produced, and how not regulated, and how it impacts the environment in areas like the Amazon, which I don't think would be a good idea to impact. So beyond the environmental and humanitarian impacts locally, this part is to discuss how the continent struggles with the high prevalence of use caused by this vicinity and the consequences it has, not only in terms of healthcare, but also socially. So this is something interesting that I put as a way to provoke As you can see, here's the world. This is that's your prevalence of believers. This is the world, not that high. This is South America, 1.6, which is a little bit higher than the world. But the customers, which are Oceania, North America, and Western Europe, this is actually Western and Central. If it was just Western and look back, this would be higher. They consume just the same or more than South America itself. So there is more consumption in the, let's say, the target markets than in the producing continent by itself, which is very interesting considering the things we were to mention. This chart is by country in South America compared to the world at the bottom. And we have the countries here as a whole. This is not 100% reliable. This data comes from different years. And also they were produced in different methods. So we have to look at these figures with a grain of salt. But it's still very interesting to see how countries like Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina consume more cocaine than the producing countries, which is, in a way, a very similar fashion to what we were saying in the last slides. So they produce not for themselves, but for buyers. Even though this is a smaller market, it is still a market relevant one, and the use prevalences are higher in these centers. So we're talking about the different products and their brands of cocaine. We have, besides the refined cocaine, which is the one to the right, which is more expensive, even in South America, where it's less expensive than Australia, for example, it's still associated with higher socioeconomic status. And we have different prevalences of the derivatives across the continent. So crack cocaine is very prevalent in Brazil. It is quite prevalent in Uruguay, Argentina, but those places will tend to go for the base, for Paco and Azul. And so both are associated with extreme vulnerability, extreme poverty, and it is very common to see patients, and this is something that we work with people with cocaine use disorders in South America see every day. People who start using cocaine powder, and then when they run out of money because they're spending more and more because they need more than their tolerance, then they migrate to use too. So it would be either crack or the paste. This is also interesting. So there are studies showing that, for example, when Argentina went in an economic crisis in 2001, the consumption of the bus in Paco has skyrocketed. So there's a very good association with the economic status of the individual, with the economic status of the society, and with the in this way. This is the crack land in São Paulo. This is a city where I'm from. This is a place where everybody who lives in São Paulo knows about this. It has been there. It has been there against their will. So many things. This is a very important place in the city. There are 1,500 people living in what they call the flow. This is the flow. And the reason why they call it a flow is that people don't actually live there. 1/3 does, but most people do not live there. So some people live in their houses and then go to these public open air seats. So they would have like this community of people around them, and they would be in a space where it's safe to use and where they can feel comfortable using stimulants and alcohol, which is also very prevalent in this place. And obviously this is the stage of a lot of political controversy. So we've had countless operations, police operations that would disperse things and people would go out and to another place. And then they come back, or they come back in the place. This has happened back and forth many, many times. I think there is one of these actions taking place now. So this area today is empty. As I was preparing this lecture, I was checking the news to give you the proper information. But there is a big mystery about where the sweeping is right, which is also very problematic when we're talking about 1,500. These are other open-air scenes in South America. So this picture is horrible. This is in a place called Pedrones in Bogotá, Colombia, which is a big city in Colombia as well. Whereas there's a lot of consumption of paste in refined cocaine as well. Colombia, unlike most South American countries, is having some issues with opioids recently. This is not something we see, for example, in Brazil or Argentina. But Colombia seems to have this incipient problem that is growing. And this is where Buenos Aires, which is also obviously an enterprise spot where people consume paste in extreme quantity. So this is to talk a little bit about the health impact of cocaine and its derivative use. This is something most people know, so I'll try not to spend a lot of time in this. This is very interesting. These two studies, so we have one study to the left, one study to the right. These are good for looking not just at cocaine use by itself, but cocaine use disorder, right? So the diagnosis of cocaine use disorder, which includes dependence. So as we can see, there is a higher burden in South America compared to the world, which is expected. There is an increasing prevalence in 2000 and decreasing in 2010s, which is also interesting. And unlike the chart I showed you before, this study found that the highest incidences of cocaine use disorders were in Argentina. And the second one talks about the treatment gap. And now the three countries, so Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay, there's a big treatment gap, just like the American colony. The treatment facilities are concentrated in urban areas, also in a very common pattern. And also, as expected, stigma plays a big role in this poor access to health. So obviously, cocaine use disorder is associated with other substance use disorders. And I was trying to, make it higher and higher, so we start with alcohol. In the Brackland, the one I showed you before, which was in São Paulo, the prevalence of alcohol use is higher than that of cocaine. So some people would, provokingly call it the alcohol land rather than cocaine. But the thing is that alcohol and cocaine are a classic combination. There's the ethylene and the vulnerability and the availability in these places. Cannabis is also highly associated. Sometimes they would smoke cannabis and crack under the same cigarette pipe. Amphetamines are not a big issue in South America. At this point, they are starting to grow in certain groups. But stimulants are highly associated with each other. So the few cases we have have higher odds among cocaine dependents than somebody with cocaine dependence. And the inhalants, this is very interesting. This is very high because in South America, inhalants are very associated with vulnerability. So those are considered street drugs. So whoever is in the streets will use one and will use the other, or at least will be very exposed to both. In terms of mental health, nothing new here. What is interesting to discuss in this slide is that substance use disorders, in this case cocaine, and things like depression, psychosis, even suicide and PTSD, they kind of have a reverse causation relationship. So one causes the other, and the other causes one. And when you have so much cocaine available, such a high prevalence, you're going to fuel, or you're going to boost mental health comorbidities for sure. There are also the infectious diseases that we're well aware of, bloodborne diseases, which is, this is highly increased by injecting. There is tuberculosis, which is still pretty common in some places. I would say definitely in Brazil. And it's associated, contamination, the transmission is associated with agglomerations and breathing in the same space for a given period of time. So tuberculosis is still a thing. It's a big thing in cities like Rio and Tardelli because of the agglomeration, but it's very associated with the vulnerability in the breast. And the skin soft tissues, which are not just local infections in people who inject drugs, but there is a component of, again, being in-house, being vulnerable, and not having proper hygiene conditions. For medical complications, cocaine and crack pretty much increase every possible cardiac outcome with all medical risks. There's a dramatically high risk or increased risk of having a heart attack in the first hour following use. And other cardiac conditions are also prevalent. In terms of neurological, we have obviously stroke, which share many of the risk factors with heart attacks. And studies have found that they are more prevalent among young and black individuals in the context of crack. There is this very unique called crack lung syndrome, which is a syndrome where an individual usually presents with shortness of breath and any other acute symptoms, which might include pneumonitis, for example. And it's important to say this is an acute syndrome that happens following the use. So this is not something many people around the world have the opportunity to see, fortunately. But this is, medical standpoint, it's interesting. And there's the obstetric population, which is at a very high risk of having all the potential complications of pregnancy, of delivery, and of the postpartum period. So this is why this population has been gaining so much attention from recent research. Just to discuss a little bit now about the drug-related violence in South America. We have some very high rates of homicide. We have this 19.7%, which is almost fourfold the world's homicide rate. And we have 50% of those homicides with an origin in organized crime. Honestly, I thought it was more. In the world, this is much less than half. So this kind of depicts very, very clearly the role of violence in the South American context, not just among people who use crack and cocaine, but in society as a whole. So these are metrics. As you can see here, we have Ecuador skyrocketing again. This increase is recent, ever since the Board of Guayaquil has been gaining importance as cocaine outlet. The areas around Guayaquil have been becoming more and more violent. Recently, a candidate to presidency in Ecuador was murdered. This happened about 1 month ago. And it's still not known the motivations and who did it. Some of the Guayaquil people say they were not, but there's high suspicion. So these things, they exist there, and people live with those. So those things are on the news every time, and they become concerningly naturalized by the people living there. Yeah, so we have some key criminal organizations. We have, so in Colombia, where the cartels started, we have a very fragmented landscape at the moment. So we don't have a big cartel which rules everything. It's more distributed. And even the Mexican cartels have been coming to Colombia. In Brazil, which has that unique situation of being both a trafficking route and a consumer, we have these very strong organizations, like ACC and CDE, that regulate the routes, but also regulate the local market. And they will make lots of money from that. And the consequences of that are very scary because once you have this profitable business, you gain money, you gain power, you infiltrate governments, you have military training, which is often delivered by retired policemen. So they get the know-how, the savoir-faire. And this becomes a more tricky situation for the state, for example, to deal with, because you cannot ignore those people. You cannot pretend those forces are there. There are organizations from out of South America who also play a role there. And one of them that has been involved with the Ecuador situation, reportedly is the Albanian Mafia. And they will quickly adapt to changes in law enforcement. So it's very difficult to dismantle these associations. So I thought about bringing here something that has to do with not just data, not just medical stuff, but how people live. I'm saying in Brazil because that's where I'm from, but this happens in South America as a whole. So if you look at this beautiful house, I guess you guys agree it's a nice house. You have this, well, maybe you don't see it. There's a huge wall here. And all the houses are like that. So the neighboring houses, because that's the way. This is actually my parents' house. And people have broken into it, just a second. So this is something that, people see beautiful houses, but why do they have all this big wall and those electric fences and things like that? And it sounds so naive for someone who's actually living there. This is Rio. And this is, people who go to Rio will probably want to see the beaches and the beautiful nature wonders, and it's beautiful indeed. But this isn't a common scene, not as common as the beach. So you see the police and sometimes the army, which has to make interventions, like from the federal government in Rio, because the situation of drug trafficking in Rio has grown so bad and violence is so stark that there is no other way than joining forces with the army. But this is something, this kind of robbery with this mugging with guns is also something which is very naturalized. And one thing people are starting to do to adapt to that is to come up with an old phone that doesn't work anymore, and if somebody points the gun, they just give the fake phone. This is something that, I see the South Americans here doing this with all the naturality in the world, but this might shock some people, so it's not something you see every time. And this is a consequence. It brings not only in terms of healthcare. So the people in South America, they present very, very low rates of trust, both interpersonal and in institution. So if you look at this 19% figure from Latin America, it highly contrasts with the 41% in the OECD countries, which is just a comparator. In Brazil and Venezuela, well, Venezuela is living a very complicated political moment, but also Brazil, it's even lower. So if you look at this map, they are shamefully yellow. And this is something you definitely do see on a daily basis when you talk to people. When you go to other countries, you think it's so cute how people trust each other. So this is a consequence of crime, violence being taken advantage of many times. This second one is just, these are two different surveys that will look at the same thing, which is interpersonal trust. So, this is just to see if they correlate, if they correlate perfectly, that might all be in this line. But most countries are, and the ones who rate high in one should rate high in the other one. And look at ours. We don't even reach 30% in any of the surveys. So this is something that you see on a daily basis. You see in culture. That's ingrained. It's part of society. And the last one is basically how much people can be trusted on this axis, and how much people want to take advantage of you in responsible business. So if most people can be trusted and people want to take advantage of you, it is expected that the countries would be in the line, right? Because it should be correlated. We have interesting cases of Saudi Arabia where we think people can be trusted, but also they're taking advantage of you. And the Philippines,
they're not taking advantage of you, but they're not interested either. But the other ones kind of are distributed along the line. And again, we have Chile, Venezuela, Peru, Argentina on the right lower side. Okay, so now I said those things, and we're maybe very, mobilized by all the situation, but we have to propose something, right? We have to look at the future. What has been done so far? Mostly militarized approaches. So within country, within continent, not so much, and some with international collaborations, mostly with the US. I think the Colombia plan, which was organized by the government in the US, is the most famous one. They spend a lot of money in that. As you can see in the picture, the Colombians were not super happy with some of them. This means Colombia plan. The gringos look the guns, Colombia looks the death. In a way to say this increases violence against Colombians using US military. They did spend a lot of money to focus on militarized actions and the eradication of crops, so they would just eradicate and eliminate the crops. There's something called the ballooning effects, which means that if you remove the crop from this one place, they will grow somewhere else, which is not different from the crackland I mentioned. So, those people will just move, and maybe they will move to areas in the Amazon basin, in indigenous lands. So this is maybe not the best approach in this situation. And there were reasons for violence when we created this tension, as expected. The manobura is like an approach which was used in many countries in a more repressive fashion. And what we see in many places, and people who have worked in these environments see a lot, is a lot of incarceration of low-level traffickers, so people would buy one block of crack, buy two, sell one because the other one, so they wouldn't do that to pay for their own use. And this is not really effective, right? Because if you arrest that one, the next day you're going to have two. And this is not really looking at the roots, the main cause of the problems. And there were some human rights violations in this policy as well. There were some health center programs. I will mention these three. The supervised consumption sites in Bogotá, which were best consumption sites in other parts of the world. Colombia, as I said, has more opioids than countries more to the south of the continent. So they would do a lot of prevention of overdose with Muslim kids, for example, which is a very interesting thing to do, and provide the supplies for safer use. They would have a good number of visits, and they reversed, in 2023, they had reversed 14 overdoses. Say 13 times. The Open Arms program in São Paulo was like a leadership program. I was there, so I don't remember that. It was a very well-designed program with a low barrier for people to just come. It was not focused on abstinence, so they did not demand people to be abstinent to join in. They had this housing first inspiration, but maybe because of that, it got kind of expensive and not many people were enrolled. These are the program statistics with lots of reduced use, both from crack and other things, and access to treatment. I hope this is what happened. But something I saw from that program is that it was very well conceived, but not very well executed, and things were not measured, which is a problem for all these programs. In the no-cocaine in Bolivia, we had a different approach to want to differentiate the traditional use of coca and the farmer who uses coca without being in the cocaine stream from the illegal production. And the main result was a reduction in this forced eradication violence. But again, we need more data. We had a very nice talk yesterday about evaluation of implementation policies, and we definitely lack data for this. We do have some directions which are more evidence-based to follow. So we have some for the development of the leaf, which is instead of just eradicating the crops, providing support to farmers and having some local control. So those people would have something to do instead of just go somewhere else to grow their crops. But the eradication itself, as has been said, as has been shown, is not very effective work. And about the interdictions, I can say here that if you watch Breaking Bad, then we should go for the Walter Whites. Because we're talking about labs, and we're talking about high-level traffickers. The person in the street who's going to sell 2 to 3 blocks, you can arrest 200 of those, but it's not going to be super effective. It won't be effective at all. And of course, the health center approach. So leaders focus on analyzing so people will not get scared to get treatment and to offer treatment to people. So in terms of prevention, we have programs which are based on life skills and family, which are more effective, it has been shown by literature from even like 20, 30 years ago, that are more relevant, more effective than just programs that will say, just say no, which is kind of shown. Harm reduction, so creating low barrier programs so people can come to treatment, and offering things that will help them achieve better general health outcomes, and integrating the drug treatment to the healthcare network in general. So bringing drugs to health is the key message. We do have programs that are being conducted by International Response. This is UNODC, UGA, and WHO. This is called Scale Up. It's a program I'm happy to be a part of. The goal is to expand the access to evidence-based treatment for stimulant use disorders in general, not just cocaine and crack, but focusing on low and middle-income countries with a very clear goal to promote research and implementation of scalable interventions, both psychosocial and pharmacological, and also doing that for capacity building, technical guidance, and policy. In fact, there's going to be a session tomorrow. You have the leaflets right here about Scale Up. So if you want to come, you're very welcome to join, and please pick up the leaflets with the details on the table. And last, there is the KLAB, which is a project which is also being conducted by the UNODC that wants to provide quality assurance for the treatment systems in Latin America. So they would make analysis from each country scenario specifically and provide roadmaps with short, mid, and long-term goals. So this is a take-home message. This is a very complex issue. There are lots of historical, economic, and social factors that will lead to this. The impact of this is widespread, so there are countless ways to see where this impact affects the continent itself. The approach should be health-centered, and the solutions should be collaborative. So this is a complex problem that requires a complex solution. And this is just one last thing. As somebody from America myself, I didn't want to come here and just say, talk about how violent it is or how we produce drugs. This sentence in Puerto Rico means people with no legs but still walks. This is actually not South American. This is from a Puerto Rican group called Tardelli. And those pictures are all people or things or landscapes or food. So that we have writers like Garcia Marquez from Colombia, Neruda from Chile. We have Mercedes Sosa, which is an amazing singer from Argentina. We have the Guarani ethnicity in Paraguay. We have ceviche from Peru. We have arepa from Venezuela. We have the salad from Bolivia, the mate from Uruguay. We have, carnival from Brazil. We have the tacos from Ecuador. And we have the beta something of all time, which is also from Brazil. So, thank you so much for being here today. It was a pleasure.
comprehensive talk about cocaine in South America. We have time for one or two questions.
Thank you so much for your sincere presentation. I would like to ask two questions if possible. As far as I know, there's a new emerging drug called cocaine in Latin America, which is a mixture of cocaine, MDMA, and some opiates. Do you have any knowledge about it? Oh, okay. I'll ask others. I heard there's a new emerging drug called pink cocaine, which is a mixture of cocaine, MDMA, and some opiates. Do you have any knowledge about that? That's one question. And the second one is, what do you think about the El Salvador approach with the CESO prison? Thank you so much.
So about the pink cocaine, I'm aware of it, yes. It's not a problem only in South America, many places have it. I think Europe has some problem with pink cocaine. And like one of the things people say about pink cocaine is that it's lots of things, not necessarily cocaine. So, and it can be even more dangerous. It might contain MDMA, it might contain opioids and many determinants, including bath salts, which are the cannabinoids. So they are a problem, but they still, I don't see them as a big thing yet because they're still expensive in some way. Honestly, I don't know that much about the Salvador. I know they're using one approach, they're going same. Let's see, we need to see data and see what's going on in terms of activity. We're agnostic to interventions, but we had many similar approaches that did not really work. Maybe this is different, and yield different outcomes, but that's all I can say. So.
Do you know that what is the difference in yours and however most
Yeah, sorry, this was all the way in South American countries, so Argentina is the first one in South America.
We have reached the end of time, so I'd like to thank our speaker and the audience.